Hello, and welcome to Day by Day True Crime Stories, the podcast where we explore a different crime or justice milestone from this day in history. I'm your host, Kona Gallagher, and today is June 8th. On this day in 2001, a peaceful morning at a small elementary school in suburban Japan was shattered by an act of unthinkable violence. A man walked into Ikeda Elementary School just outside of Osaka and began a brutal knife attack that left 8 children dead and over a dozen others wounded. The horror of that day shook Japan to its core. A country known for its low crime rate and safe communities was suddenly grappling with a kind of tragedy it had rarely seen. And the ripple effects would spark sweeping changes in school safety and mental health policy across the nation. Today, we're going to revisit the events of that day, learn about the man behind the attack, and examine how this tragedy left a permanent mark on Japan. Let's get started. June 8, 2001 was a Friday like any other at Ikeda Elementary School, a well-respected public school. More than 700 students from nearby neighborhoods came through its doors each morning, including dozens of first and second graders who filled classrooms with chatter and energy. That morning, students were settled into their lessons, teachers were moving through their routines, and everything felt familiar and safe. But just after 10 a.m., that sense of security was shattered. A man, later identified as 37-year-old Mamoru Takuma, entered the school through an unlocked door. He went to the second floor and walked into a classroom. Without warning, he began stabbing children with a kitchen knife, focusing on the youngest students. Chaos broke out. Screams echoed throughout the hallway as he moved into a second classroom, continuing his attack. Teachers rushed to intervene. Some tried to protect students, others ran for help. Several staff members were injured in the process. Within minutes, school personnel and police were able to subdue Takuma and take him into custody. But the damage had already been done. 8 children, 7 girls, and 1 boy, all between the ages of 6 and 8, were dead. 13 more were wounded, including 2 teachers. The entire attack had lasted less than 15 minutes. The children who lost their lives that day were in the earliest years of elementary school. They were bright, hopeful, and just beginning their journeys. Their names and faces became known across Japan and sparked a nationwide wave of grief. The attack devastated families, teachers, and classmates. For a country where homicides are extremely rare, especially in schools, the Ikeda massacre felt almost surreal. Parents who had dropped their children off that morning never imagined that they wouldn't bring them home. People across the nation mourned alongside the community. Memorials appeared outside of the school gates with flowers, handwritten notes, photos, and toys. The school year was suspended, and within days, a memorial service was held, drawing educators, government officials, and residents who came together in collective mourning. In many ways, the attack shattered a cultural belief that schools in Japan were sanctuaries that couldn't be touched by the violence seen elsewhere in the world. But that belief was gone in an instant. Mamoru Takuma, the man arrested at the scene, had a long and disturbing history. He had worked a string of jobs: janitor, bus driver, factory hand, and had been fired from most of them for dangerous or erratic behavior. He also had a criminal record, including arrests for drugging coworkers and making violent threats. He had also been hospitalized multiple times for mental illness. Despite all of this, Takuma had slipped through the cracks. By 2001, he wasn't under any kind of psychiatric supervision. But he also didn't know anyone at the school. He had no personal motive for this attack. In police interviews after his arrest, he said that he'd attacked the school because he wanted to be executed. He showed little remorse for his actions, and his statements to police were often strange and unsettling. Investigators and psychiatrists would later describe him as deeply disturbed, but legally sane. Takuma was charged with multiple counts of murder and attempted murder. His defense team argued that he was mentally unfit to be held responsible, but psychiatric evaluations found him competent to stand trial. He was diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder, but under Japanese law, that didn't meet the standard for legal insanity. Throughout his trial, Takuma remained confrontational and disruptive. He made inflammatory statements, interrupted proceedings, and at one point told the court, quote, "Even if I'm executed, I'll do it again in my next life," end quote. He was convicted in 2003 and sentenced to death. Takuma declined to appeal his sentence. In September 2004, just over a year later, he was executed by hanging, one of the fastest executions in recent Japanese history. Japan responded to the Ikeda massacre with swift and sweeping changes. Schools across the country re-examined their security procedures. Where open doors had once been the norm, new systems were implemented, including locked entrances, surveillance cameras, and security personnel. The idea of a school as a completely open and trusting space was replaced by a more cautious approach to student safety. Today, a quiet memorial garden sits outside Ikeda Elementary School. Every year on June 8th, people gather to remember the victims. They lay flowers, read the names of the victims, and hold a moment of silence. The children are not forgotten. The massacre at Ikeda Elementary School was a moment of national heartbreak. It was a violent act that left scars across the country that wasn't used to such brutality. But it also became a catalyst for change, and it prompted Japan to rethink how it protects its most vulnerable citizens. Thank you for joining me on today's episode of Day by Day True Crime Stories. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. It'll help us grow. And be sure to join me again tomorrow as we explore another significant event in true crime history. Until then, stay safe and remember that behind every headline is a life worth remembering. Day by Day True Crime Stories is a Little Monster production.
Hey, you can do it!